All right, in this lesson, we'll explore how to retrieve rows from a data frame by index position rather than the index label, and we'll be using the iloc method to accomplish that. Now, there's quite a bit to take in here, so let's get started. I'll begin by re-executing the code to import my James Bond CSV, and here I'm going to keep my default numeric index, so I'm not going to use the film column. This is just to demonstrate the standard iloc method. So iloc is short for index location, and if we're dealing with a typical numeric index as we have here, the iloc method will operate basically identically to the loc method, because in this scenario the index position is the exact same as the index label. It's just the number. So if I do something like loc and get, let's say, the 15th position item, we're going to get a view to a kill as our film. And iloc, which represents the index position, is also 15. In this specific example, the index label and the index position are identical. So loc and iloc will work identically. And as you can see here, it's the exact same syntax. It's just .iloc followed by square brackets instead of regular parentheses. So iloc is actually going to give us the exact same result as loc. And the same process is going to apply if we want to do something like multiple values. So if I want a list of values, let's say index positions 15 and 20, I can get those films. If I want all index positions starting from the beginning of our data set and proceeding to number 4, I can do that. The one big difference here in comparison to using string labels is when we use these numeric positions, it's going to go up to 4 but not include 4. So here you can see we're starting at 0 and we're going up to and including 3, so 4 is not included. And similarly with iloc, we can do things like take the index positions from 4 through 8, so 8 will not be included, and there we have 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're just, again, extracting rows based on the index position, which is kind of the numbering sequence if you think of it that way. And we can also do things like take from a specific location, like the 20th index position, and proceed to the end of the data set with the colon. That's going to pull starting from film 20 and all the way to the end. And that's pretty familiar. That's something that we've played around with a lot when we did things like extraction from a series. The only difference here is we need to add that additional iloc. It's not just the square brackets. But here's where it gets really interesting. I'm going to copy this code again, and I'm going to paste it below, and I'm once again going to add that index call parameter and make it equal to film. That's going to set the film column as our index, and then I'm also going to sort it to optimize our operations. I have to remember to put that in place equals true. So there I have the data frame as it looks like in the last lesson. And we know that we can use loc from the last lesson to extract a specific value. For example, Bond loc GoldenEye is going to get that row. But here's what's interesting. Even though we have an index of labels here, we have strings, a view to a kill, Casino Royale, GoldenEye, etc. Behind the scenes, each of these index labels is still assigned an index position. So even though we don't see the numbers on our front end when we look at it, each of these rows has actually received an index position. So for example, if I use iloc to extract a row at a specific index location, that's what iloc stands for, and I want to pull the very first row, which has an index position of 0, that's going to represent a view to a kill in our data frame. So I'm going to get a view to a kill right here and all of its related data. So even though we don't see the index positions up front, we can still use them. So we can do things like extract the film with an index position of 15, which is going to be represented with the label on Her Majesty's Secret Service in our actual data frame. We can similarly do things like extract sequential lists of films. We can do things like extract from the beginning of the data frame to a specific point. And keep in mind, in this scenario, once again, what's going to happen is it's going to start from 0 and include 0 and go up to but not include the film at an index position of 8. So we're only going to have 8 films here, even though we have 9 total films between 0 and 8 in those positions. We can also do things like from a specific point, let's say 18 to the end of the data set, we can extract films that way. And of course, we can also feed in a list. If I want the 5th 10th, 15th, and 20th index positions, we can do that. So the iloc method extracts rows from the data frame based on their index position or their index location. But what's interesting is it doesn't matter what we're actually using as the index. If we have the default numeric index, it's going to work predictably. It's just that we're going to be able to see those values up front. But even if we set a custom index, such as a film column or a column of booleans or a column of floats or integers, behind the scenes, every single one of those index labels is still going to be assigned a numeric position. And we can use those numeric positions within the square brackets after the iloc method in order to extract those rows. So that's the iloc method. It extracts based on index position. So it accepts integers as its arguments. That's in comparison to loc, which extracts based on index labels, which can take something like strings. So I'll see you in the next lesson where we'll introduce another catch-all method called ix, which functions sort of like an amazing combination of both loc and iloc together.